Hello and welcome to the Brooklyn Rail's 936, the New Social Environment. I'm Chloe, Director of Programs here at the Rail, and I have the pleasure and honor and privilege of being your MC today for a conversation featuring Deborah Roberts and Scheherazade Tillet. We're thrilled to welcome poet Ezza Ahmed here to close today's program. Before we get started, the Brooklyn Rail acknowledges Black Lives Matter, and that here in New York, we're on Lenape-Hoking, the unceded land and waters of the Wappinger, Canarsie, Munsee, and Lenni Lenape people of the Delaware Nation and Shinnecock Indian Nation. We recognize land acknowledgements are not a replacement for necessary decolonial work, but they do serve as a reminder of place and of the legacies of dispossession and enslavement that sustain and enrich the stolen land we are speaking from. And now I'll introduce today's guest and host. Combining collage with mixed media, Deborah Roberts' figurative works depict the complexity of Black subjecthood and explore themes of race, identity, and gender politics. Roberts' use of collage reflects the challenges encountered by young Black children as they strive to build their identity, particularly as they respond to preconceived social constructs perpetuated by the Black community, the white gaze, and visual culture at large. Combining a range of different facial features, skin tones, hairstyles, and clothes, Roberts explains that with collage, I can create a more expansive and inclusive view of the Black cultural experience. Roberts was born in Austin, Texas in 1962, where she continues to live and work. And our host today, Scheherazade Tillet, who will be hosting on behalf of herself and her original co-host for this conversation, Zoraida Lopez-Diago, who sadly couldn't be with us today due to unforeseen circumstances, is a photo-based artist, curator, and feminist activist who explores the themes of Blackness, play, freedom, and healing. She is one of the lead artists for the Black Girlhood Altar Project and curator of the Say Her Name, the Requia Board Monument Project in Chicago. She is co-founder and executive director of A Long Walk Home, a nonprofit that uses art to empower young people to end violence against girls and women. She was awarded by the Field Foundation and the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation for her exemplary leadership work in Chicago. And in 2022, she co-curated with Zoraida Lopez-Diago, Picturing Black Girlhood, Moments of Possibility, the largest exhibition on Black girls and genderqueer youth. And with that, I am going to pass it over to Scheherazade.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited about today and having this conversation with you, Deborah. It's been, 2 years, but I've been a fan of your work for a very, very long time. So for me, it feels longer than that. And so I just wanted to say congratulations with everything that's going on in the new show. I'm so excited to see it. I'll be back in New Jersey, and I will get to see it. So I'm excited about that. I actually wanted to begin by just wishing you happy birthday.
Yeah, I had a big birthday bash Friday.
Yeah. And so every time we have birthdays, it's a good moment to reflect on the past and the present. And I kind of wanted to hear a little bit more about that for you. Like, what are some of your wishes for yourself?
Oh God. Well, I think when you get over a certain age, you're just happy to wake up every morning and be able to, move around properly. But for me, my birthdays, because I came from a large family, and what we would do is instead of having individual birthdays, if you were part of a birthday month, we would have a birthday month party. So in November, me and my mom shared that month. So we would have a party on the 4th of every November. And so it was great, it was, this year was even, more special because it was coincided with my opening in New York City. So it was great. And I got to see a lot of people I hadn't seen in a long time. And it was nice. It really was.
Well, I guess I wanted to expand on some of that journey of you. I was rewatching some of your past interviews and you talk about God is smiling on you, right? And you know, some of us fans out here, like myself, been just so happy to see the moments of success, right? Or what we view as success, and also engaging this work about visibility around people who are often invisible in such a big way. So I remember like when I voted, that was a big mark. When I voted and I got the sticker,
Right.
sticker that to me was like, oh my God, you're there, or the cover of the magazine, or watching Sex in the City.
Yeah.
You're right. I wanted to hear a little bit more, you know, what this journey has been for you.
Wow. You know, when I tell people that is, you know, it's not that God doesn't smile on everyone, because he does. It's
Mm,
that I think that he really like, you know, like this lady has been working at it so long.
mm,
And he put me through my trials and tribulations like everyone, and humbled me. You know, and you know, a lot of people work at shoe stores, but I had just recently got my master's degree. I was a Syracuse fellow, so at kind of the top level, and then I could not find a job and had to work at a shoe store, and it humbled me a lot. And so I think when I had the success at the Volta Art Fair, I think God smiled on me in a way that he gave me all the things that I had been praying for. And I've honored it. You know, I haven't squandered it. I kept my focus. I kept doing my work. I kept my eyes, as they say, on the prize and what I wanted to say. I did not sit in my success. I tried to grow my practice each time. So I think that that's very important as an artist, that if he allows you to do the things that you love the most, you take most advantage of it. And I think I've done that. So all the little other things that came along, you know, with that, I'm so happy for. But I'm most happy that I have been an earnest and a good steward of the gift that he's given me. So yeah, so that type of dedication, you know, I put in my as Malcolm Gladwell say, my 10,000 hours, you know.
mm.
So yeah.
Yeah, we get to see some of that when you show us on social media, even your studio, which I think I really love to see. And so let's talk about your show.
Yeah.
And I met you. I'm kind of gonna go to the beginning. I met you at in person, at least, at,
Right.
at Picturing Black Girlhood, the show that me and Zoraida co-curated on Black girlhood. And one of the works that we chose was a work that's also featured in this show, that it's from your personal collection. And
Right.
I was actually really surprised to see this here, because I know that this is your work, your own personal, uh, you know, and we could also speak about that. What does it mean to collect your own work? But tell us your choice of putting this work that in this particular show.
Well, one of the things that happened is they had this little alcove right here, this little square area.
Yeah.
And they had told me, you know, we could put one of your other pieces that I had been working on currently, and it would separate it from the show. And
Hmm.
because it's not really a part, it's in the front of the gallery. And I said, no, 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 no. Let's use one of the works that are currently in my book, Deborah Roberts, 20 Years of Artwork. And so I offered up Rosa and this one called Golden Delicious,
Hmm.
and both in the book. And we went with Rosa because she was already framed. I had, you know, it's my personal one. So even when it came back from your show, it was still in the box. It was still ready to go. And it doesn't hang in my house. I just know where it is. And so we decided we'll just put it in that little alcove. And it just works perfectly with the show because it's both past work alongside current work, that you can see the growth within the work, which is something that I wanted to do back in 2017 when I did this one. I wasn't working on canvases at that time. And actually, it's 2018. I wasn't working on canvases. And so now when you come in, you see this little small, which I thought was the largest work I would ever do in a collage, 30 by 22. And now you see these real
Oh wow.
huge ones. They're like huge. 84 square to 70 by 62. I mean, just big works, you know.
Yeah, let's talk about that too. Because when I saw the images from the show, I was just really surprised by such the large scale, some of the palette choices. Can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit? It seems like it's obviously in the family, but a departure from some of the prior works. It being such in large scale
Right.
and just even just yeah some of the details of the work in terms of seeing some of the drawings and the paintings can you share about like this particular show
Yeah.
and what people
Well,
expect?
you
Yeah.
know, like when you look at Rosa and
Mhm.
that piece was primary all collage. It wasn't hardly too much my hand in the work, just a
Yeah.
small amount. And what these works done, the shift over the 5 years, is that the work is now requiring more painterly. I mean, it used to be
Mhm.
80% collage and 20% paint drawing and anything else. But now it's shifted, where now it's almost 20% collage and more painting and drawing. And I think that had something to do with just the growth of the work and also my background as a painter. I was
Mhm.
a painter for a lot of years before collage came in. And collage was great because collage offered me the opportunity to break up this monolithic idea of Blackness, and collage was a perfect, vehicle to do that. Paint can do that also, but not in the flatness and almost the coolness of collage, because it's a bunch of cutting, pasting, watering, and all those types of things that can lend itself to growth and ideas. And so I don't know what's happening. I've always been earnest with the work and let the work, tell me what it needs to do, and it needs to do this right now. And also, I want to kind of put some space between my work, to show that there has been some major growth and major ideas and sophistication to the work as it relates to work that I've done in the past.
And the scale, so it being I saw that I think it was in 2014 that you kind of in grad school that you had like a large piece but you hadn't done these kind of large
Yeah.
pieces.
Wow. No. And in grad school, I did some 6x7s,
Okay.
some 7x7s. I only did three because,
Mm.
I always make this funny story. I went to see Carrie Mae Weems. She lives in Syracuse to do a studio visit. And first thing she said after I gave my whole big spiel is, this work looks like Wengechi Mutu. And I don't see any Deborah Roberts. Now, this was 4 months out for me graduating. I didn't see it. I was like, I didn't fight her on it. I didn't see it. She said she wanted to see more Deborah Roberts in the work. What does that look like? And I said, I don't know. So she gave me an assignment. I didn't do it, but she gave it to me. But I went back and I really, really looked at my work, and I saw some similarities. Maybe people would be drawn to that I didn't want. I'm a free thinker. I knew I wanted my work to talk about race, gender, beauty, and politics without, while I'm a beneficiary of other artists who've come before me, I wanted to have my own language, my own words. So I went back and I started working on those big, huge collages. I put one of them, put my face in it. One of them I did a whole abstracted where you could only see feet, which is the cover of my book. I just really went back and did the work that was required of me to make this work my work, you know. And so I think that's what's happening in these larger pieces, that idea of not be whiteness centered around these work, that the Black figure is moving forward and pushing through, is telling you, come in, stop, it's telling you enough, more, it's doing all those types of conversations within the square root of the painting.
Can you since we're actually at this piece, can you talk about the use of obviously the Black figure but also the the palette of the Black paint? And so it kind
Yeah,
of makes me think about Kerry James Marshall, how
right.
he is from Chicago, so I'm going to shout him out, but also like the painter of our time. Yeah, can you talk about your use of Blackness
Right.
in particular scene?
Well, I was telling them the other day that I read a lot of and listen to a lot of podcasts. And I was listening to a Song of Solomon when I started thinking about doing Black work. The white canvas is exactly what I wanted. Whiteness has its own language, but I wanted to see how these existed in the language of Blackness, because my assistants, we all did some research on Black women when we're talking about Black names. And it came across a thing that 400 Black women have been missing since 2016. Well, you know what happened in 2016. We elected a different president and, pretty much took up all the news. And so while this story should make headlines, they never did. And so I was saying that these women are absent and present at the same time, that they are lost and never found. How could I work through that? And one of the things I did was the chalk line around it. That made them present. You know that they were there. Then what I did was start to evaporate the image, start taking away from it, the color, the scheme, the paint. It was slowly disappearing, but yet it was still present. And so the Black paintings were great. I only wanted to do 4. They were very dark. They made me feel uncomfortable. I was at a show in Los Angeles and talked to Paul Schimmel. And he said, I saw those Black paintings. He said, Deborah, the truth is in that work, that you should push it forward and do more of those. And I was like, oh, but I didn't really like how I felt. And he said, maybe you're supposed to feel that way. And so I've been diving into them. I think I have a total of 14 that I've done so far, or less. I think it may be less than 14. It may be 8. And each one is getting better. So I'm going to stick with it for a while and see how it works. But the white paintings, the white backgrounds, we're adding different things to those to create a more expansive dialogue around collage. So I love the Black ones. I love the fact that this is all Black paint, different shades of Black, and inside his hand is Black, So
Yeah.
it's great.
Thank you for pointing out the chalk, the white chalk
Right.
outline. I actually did not realize what that was and how it was tied to your. Is it the series? Was it called Unseen?
Yeah, maybe it was unseen. I mean,
Okay.
I have to say, my brain is mushy.
No, it's okay. I just
was like,
admired that series so much because not
yeah,
people are talking about the epidemic about missing and murdered
right.
Black children and indigenous children at large. Those are like the primary numbers of missing. And so as a visual artist at your height, to talk about that work really resonated to the work that I do as an activist around that. So yeah, so I thank you for touching on that and keep on going with it. I hear you saying it's hard.
It is. I mean, it's
Yeah.
got, some of this work. I listened to the 1619 project, made it really hard to kind of push through it. So I changed to more podcast, and it allows it because it's a dark space,
Yeah. I think how do you work through that? I'm just curious because like
Well, you don't want to get caught in it because it's a trap. When you see how unfair life really is to people of color, and how the things that have happened in the past that has handicapped us in so many ways, and still is happening. Some of the laws, mass incarceration. You look at how young kids are given harsher penalties. Younger Black children are treated as adults. The adultification of Black children, they're not given the benefit of the doubt when it comes to court cases and things like that. So it can be very overwhelming and daunting. So you have to have some spaces in which to move out of that. And this particular one, girl, woman, work in progress. I was actually talking about this idea that we always going to be a work in progress. We're never going to be a complete person in the sense of our identity and how we exist in the world. And one of the things that because it was New York and I haven't been there in 5 years, I did work like these were kind of images I did back then. I changed them up a little bit, but it's the whole idea of a lot of fist, a lot of blue tape, a lot of things like that. So what we did was paint the blue tape, and we put it in ways that in which I would get ready to do work and progress before I glued it down. And so this is one of those images. And it's the first time also that I did 3 works in one piece.
Mm.
And I really liked it. I mean, I was going back and I was saying, man, I mean, you've never done that before. And something that I was gonna like. I like the work that's closer to the edge. I also worked with the light and the darks of the black, and how the black changes when you add other blacks to it. So I love this piece. It's really great.
And I love the use of like the blue tape.
Yeah,
Yeah, like it shows process, and
yeah,
it translates like without even seeing the title. Like, yeah, that's a first too, right? I haven't really
yeah.
seen.
All of that's first. All of this is
Yeah,
new.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. No, I love it. It's one of my favorite ones of you.
yeah. Mine too.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I guess we could, go to the puff, the 2 puffs. I
Oh
think
yeah, that little girl.
goes with the puffs of a puffball. Yeah.
Yeah,
I wanted you to talk about actually like something that's dear to my heart and my work in general in every way, which is about Black girlhood and
right,
how this your work, right? What is Black children, and they're your muses, they're a central character, but Black girls have often been, whether it's Toni Morrison, which you cited earlier, with she started her first book was about a Black girl, right? The Bluest Eye,
right,
or um, Alice Walker's Color Purple. I think of Carrie Mae Weems's work,
right.
in the kitchen table with one of the characters is the Black girl. Can you talk about your use in deciding to have them as central to your work?
Right. Well, I mean, when I used to paint and do all those things, I did everybody, boys, girls, men, and women. But when I was in graduate school, thinking about what I wanted this work to look like, and I looked around at what other artists were doing at the time, Mickalene Thomas, Lorna Simpson, Wengechi Mutu, how they were presenting their work as far as talking about these issues, sexuality, over-sexualized Black bodies, and things like that. And I realized, nobody was talking about girlhood and how that all began. And for me, I started, thinking about how when I was young, when was my first, you know, ideas of my own independence and my looks and my hair and all those things. And it really starts early. It's earlier now because, more children they have access to more things than I did. But for me, it was 8. When I was 8, between 8 and 10, I started to think I wanted to look different. I wanted to be different. I wanted to have my hair. My mom would do 2 puffs right here. I wanted 3. She would, dress us all in the same dress with different colors, and just different things to kind of separate myself from my sisters, my own identity, instead of being the Roberts girls. I just, I want to be Deborah. I no longer want to be called Debbie. I hate Debbie. And so they could call me Deb or Deborah. And so things like that. So I started, stripping down the body, I put my face on it, and then I made it, with no clothes. And I started just really going through the exercise of creating this work. And what does it mean? And when do we have to defend our name, our image, our hair? And the work just started to unfold after that.
Hmm. And so who are, I mean, I'm not saying about the sources, but who are these girls? Who are these children? I always kind of, I always wonder, like, who are they?
Nobody's children.
Huh?
They're nobody's children. They're
And
everybody's
nobody's children.
children. They're
Everybody.
everybody's children, and they're nobody's children. These
Hmm.
are a bunch of combined faces
Yeah.
that speak to the notion of art history, American history, Black culture, and pop culture. They're no one's children, and they're everyone's children.
Oh, wow. Okay, so they're constructed for us
Right.
all. And what do you want us to understand about children? I feel like in this moment in time, there's such a moment of calling on humanity for children, right? Like,
Right.
um, and you have a whole show that's really allowing us to see children in different ways and these large scales, like, right? Like, I can't think about these large scales as an intervention about invisibility.
Right.
Have to see them, can you share a little bit more what you want us to get about children?
Well, just treat them. I mean, so many studies have been done
Yeah.
about the way Black children are being treated in the world. And the Washington Post did a wonderful thing, did a story a few years ago about how Black girls are over-sexualized more so than their peers, how their laughter is seen as something negative when you have the same girls in the same dynamic, the same situation that are non-Black and laughing, that it's girl play. But somehow when Black girls do it, it's loud, obnoxious, almost violent to some degree. And so my idea is to say they're children, treat them all as children, protect them, see their humanity, see your own humanity, and that they're all our responsibility. So that's the core process of the work. And then also I can chop through some other stereotypes that they have about Black children. Black children have to grow up a little bit faster because sometimes they're from single family households. So they have to come in and not only, open the door, come in and take care of their siblings and walk home with their siblings and to sometimes start dinner. So things like that, doesn't make you a grown up. It just makes you just in that situation where you have to make those decisions for your family to grow. And sometimes people treat Black children as that they're capable of making adult decisions when they don't have the life experience to do that. So that's what I'm talking about in the work. It's just they're young, they're children, and I put both women and men features in the work so that sometimes they are seen as somehow masculine, being able to conquer things that they're not just capable of doing. So, that's the work.
Yeah, I think it's like at the age of 6 that Black girls are seen as an adult. Um,
Right. And that's ridiculous,
yeah. And so I think you're trying to make sure that they're seen as children at the same time of protecting them at the same time. Um, and so I wanted to kind of go back to the show a little bit, and I want to talk about some of the patterns that you use and the titles, the two different questions. One, just like your creativity of these titles. How do you come up with these titles and
Man,
yeah,
that's a tough one. Titles are tough. So
or the posing
sometimes,
questions. This one, I feel like a lot of your titles in this particular show is asking us questions. Uh,
right,
mm,
right. Sometimes I go to jazz. I love jazz. I love all sorts of music, but sometimes I have to put on some jazz. Artie Shaw and Miles Davis and all those guys, and sometimes I look through their titles. I just go back and just see what they were saying back then and what the work means, because it just moves me. And so this piece I came along, it's like it could mean so many things. I left the interpretation of the audience, and when the kid is absolutely, he's like, getting ready to shoot a ball, I've shot in the ball that you don't see. That's going to lead into some other work that I'm coming down the line. But also he could be blocking
yeah.
some type of violent act toward him,
Mm,
or put your hands up. I want to see your hands. There are a
too.
lot of things that can be interpreted
Mm,
and this motion. So one of the things I want to do with the work is to lead the audience into their own interpretation and their own dialogue with the work. I've purposely left off part of the face. I want your eye to complete it, and I know that it can. I added in some type of triangles different throughout the work, that is fixed in ways that we cannot change a triangle. so things like that, I applied to the work. This one I got caught up in all honesty, I got caught up in those hands, trying to do
Yeah,
those
and the hand,
hands
there's such detail around.
and painterly and all that stuff. And I had to try to stop it and flatten them out. And it was a little bit harder because that's not where I'm trying to go with the work. But I love doing hands.
Mm. I think you have a title that says "What About Us?"
Yeah, the title of the show is
Yeah, the
called
show
What
is called
About
"What
Us?
About Us." Yeah, the title of
Yeah.
the show is called "What About Us?"
Yeah. Well, I chose that title, you know, it's like, and then like I said, especially this piece right here, it all dealt with Ralph Yall when he was shot on that porch. It bothered me so much because, everybody, even as another young lady drove into a yard just to turn around and she was shot. But this kid in particular, he just got the street mixed up. And he walked up and he rang the wrong bell and the guy just shot him. So this whole idea about not giving people the benefit of the doubt. And so when I say, what about us? It's asking you to, what about us? Give us a doubt. Sometimes it feels like Black people are not given the benefit of the doubt that we are guilty before we are innocent, and that shouldn't be the case. So in this particular piece, I have this kid just standing there with his arms crossed and maybe sitting, and he's just looking back in multiple faces, and he's just like this, and he's trying to be a grown up, but then you see that this little boy has picked a Tweety Bird hat to
Yeah,
wear, not a masculine man hat, a little boy's hat. Tweety Bird is the softest little animal, and it lends itself to see him as a child and not as a man. So those little cues. And then he has a Captain America shirt on that has been tarnished. That talks about mass incarceration, the separation of Black children from Black fathers, all those things. And they're tied into his white shirt, And then the stripes, symbolic of mass incarceration. And then he's centered in whiteness. So it's just self-titled. You title it. There's so much I could say with this work that I couldn't really find a title that could fit it.
Mm. And this one, "What About Us?"
Yeah. This piece right here,
Oh, yeah, love it.
I mean, Look How You Shine. And it was just really, one of the ones I started early on, in the process of getting ready for this. Is prior to the kid getting shot. So I was still doing typical Deborah Roberts type work with smiles and lips and stuff like that, and eyes and hair. And it just took long. This actually took longer than any of the works because it moved through different times when I was creating work, from when I started my Paris work into the summer and to the into the from the winter into the summer. And I think it was one of the last ones that were finished, but I had it in the studio for at least a year working on it.
Can you talk about some of the textiles in this work as well?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this one,
Yeah.
I think comment C. I'm curious about.
Well, I was coming back to New York, and when I was last here, I used certain patterns that I have retired. So her sleeves with the yellow flowers is a pattern that I used a lot when I first came out, and my pictures. And I have to retire them because I use them too much. And same way with my James Baldwin's eye, I've just used it so much, but it's so prevalent. It's everything his lens in which he wrote in is just so, today. But I wanted to get a nod to that idea of that I'm back, and while I can use some of the things from 2017, my catalog doesn't go away because my work changes. It's still my work, and I wanted to move that type of nuance into this new work. And I really liked it, and I thought, why not?
It's such a sense of color too. I heard you
Yeah.
talk earlier about the textiles being from Texas as well. Like, I think how colorful things are. Am I like,
No, it ain't colorful in Texas.
okay, I thought it was like going to the grocery store. I don't know. I don't know.
No. Oh, you're talking about when I found that girl LaCondria. But also, I see kids, sometimes when I am shopping, I do see children who are wearing, weird outfits and stuff like that. And sometimes I put that in my work. But one of the things that I wanted to do with bright clothing is to put colors that you would normally and patterns you would normally not see together, but children put together anyway. You can tell a kid, just tell a 6-year-old to dress themselves.
Yeah.
And it could be the coldest winter outside, and they will put on a sleeveless blouse, and they will put on shorts and sandals and want to go to school that way, because that's their idea of clothing themselves. And so one of the things, and they put stripes and polka dots together and things like that. So I was always had trying to play into that notion of childhood and independence. And the way they think and the way children think also tells about a naivety and lends itself to that they're children. So when you see those type of weird patterns together, normally adults don't put those things together. So those are some, little keys to what I'm talking about in my practice.
Oh, I love that. I love that thinking, like getting in the mindset of children and having them having an autonomy within the work.
Right.
Right. Like their own power within the image.
Right.
It's kind of, yeah. It's a beautiful way of thinking about children. And so I've heard you talk about, I'm just thinking about some of your influences, like this, in this conversation alone, you talked about like authors, right? Like from 21, James Baldwin. So I kind of love that. Like that's like the relationship between literature. My sister is Salamisha, she's a writer, and like the influence of, the two different the two different arts, right? Like the visual artist and literature, and I'm thinking about like Harlem Renaissance, like how we were all together. Can you talk more about some of your influences?
Oh wow. Really, my influences in art is just an array of people.
Yeah.
I started out with the Renaissance artists, then I went to Monet. I mean, first it was Rembrandt, then Monet, and then I got hooked on Van Gogh. Everything Van Gogh. Everything was Van Gogh for a number of years before I saw this work of Henry O'Tanner, the little boy in the banjo. I was mesmerized by it.
Mm.
It was the Black romantic. It was everything that I thought that I wanted my work to be. And I started really, Horace Pippin, different people, started reading Cornel West, the reader, how he talked about the conceptualized Black bodies and his essay on Horace Pippin. And then I started going into bell hooks, and it was just so enlightening. And I just realized the work needed more scholarship. So I went to Syracuse University, went to the master's program, started taking program in African American studies. I started the writers, Michelle Alexander, all the things we were reading just was just feeding into the art, and I didn't know it. And then I realized that's what the art needed. And so it's literary authors have been very, very important. I talked about a little bit about Judith Butler. She does a lot of gender studies, but and I can't remember the essay, but she talks about what makes a life valuable. I think she talked about Daniel, the reporter that was killed and some unrest, and what made his life more valuable than anyone else. And so she breaks down those stereotypes and all those things that we don't like to talk about, how other lives are more valuable than others.
Mm.
And so that helped me in
Mm.
creating these images that I create today. And so literature has always been the forefront. Like I told you before, I love Carrie Mae Weems and her process, and even Carrie James Marshall. God, there's so many artists out there It's really hard. I mean, if I start naming and leave somebody off, then they're gonna all kill me. But as you know, you have your peers in which you work with, and you're inspired by their work. And then not only that, this work is in my home. And so, you know, there's a Dawu Bay piece right there that I love, you know, and the kid is just, you know, every day he greets me, looking at me in the face when I'm, you know, eating my food. He said, Deborah, enough already. And so all things like that, I really enjoy.
Oh, that's good to hear you as a collector as well as
Yeah.
we collect your work and are inspired by your work. This one might be one of my newest favorites, the one that we're staring at right now.
Yeah, huddle masses.
Ah,
Yeah.
I just love everything about it. The pose, the color, the yes. Can you talk to us about this one?
Well, one of the things I was thinking about, and all of this was going back to Lyndon Sefton, the New York show. And you think about the Statue of Liberty and how she's standing there, her arm is up, and she say, I would take your tide, and you know, the downtrodden, you know, the persecuted, you know, whatever the words are, and the huddle masses. And I said, so the name of the show was What About Us Again?
Yeah.
What about us? Because we didn't come that way. We came on the bottom of a boat, shackled to each other from a long distance. So how the dream of America applies to people who have come, who came over literally as prisoners, you know. And so in that piece, she's gathered around, she's wrapped in this, you know, this towel maybe, and with these pelicans on it, not pelicans, I don't know what these things are.
Flamingos.
Flamingos, yeah. And yeah, so she's wrapped in this, and then you know, and you know, this whole idea of just, you know, like I love doing patterns, but you know, just wrapped in this with her gold nails. And I paint gold nails on all my works and all the Black figures from beginning, you know, since I left grad school, was talking about how Black bodies have always been currency in this country, has been used for currency and ways of labor. And not only that, in the way we shop and the way we do things, money is only left in the Black community, I think, in a matter of hours. And so things like that. So this whole idea was like saying, you know, what about us? What about a different type of huddle masses? How do we navigate living here?
Yeah. One of my it's my new favorite, which is hard to
Yeah,
do.
I mean, this is my favorite. And then the little boy with the Tweety bird, I love both of those.
Oh, I love the Tweety bird just because it's just that moment of without it, it can be so differently. That little addition to add a Tweety bird just captures his innocence, you know, like it captures, that detail. So you shared in like when we were talking earlier, just a second earlier about just this show and like, it was a lot of work. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit? You know, I'm always really, that's why I watch your IG lives. I'm really curious, like the process is so part of the product to me, right? And so can you just share a little bit more about what it took for this kind of show? I mean, again, I feel like it's such a new you, and yet in embracing the old you, right? I mean, the rose there.
That's exactly what I was trying to do in this work. It was just the work was moving in a different direction, and I saw that doing the works I was doing with Paris. And then also, because I was coming back, I had more angst this time. I'll be honest about it. I was more nervous about any work. I know what I'm doing. I know what the work needs to say, and I'm pretty confident in that. But kind of being away from New York for that length of time, I wanted the work to be spectacular, and that put more pressure on me than probably that I needed to have. And I knew what I wanted to say. And sometimes in work, you talk too much, you do too much in it. And I wanted to do just enough. I wanted to be minimal. I wanted the titles to kind of not be, you know, force fed upon anyone. I wanted the titles and the work to leave room for interpretation. And everybody so far, when I've talked to people who've seen the work, have different interpretation of what it means to them. And that's what you want to do. You don't want someone to go to the work and read it right away, that it is so derivative of something else, that it is your unique work and you wanted it to say that. And that's what I wanted with this work. I played with perspective and the body movement, the gestures of the work is different. They're just not standing still, they're moving. And tomorrow, after tomorrow, and tomorrow, and tomorrow, the kid is running. And he's running into his own self. And so to have that also, and the hand up, and coming into the next work, and the chalk outline that is almost mirrored. I have that Frank Stella patterns. I love Frank Stella, and I loved his patterns. And I said, well, I'm gonna just to the nod to art history in this work, what it means to put a Black body underneath the Frank Stella hat, and it's also with the pants and how that exists and things like that. And I tell people, if you look at the 4 things that I talk about in my practice, you'll see it in the work. There's history here. There's pop culture. There's American history. All those things are present and things that we are living through right now. And what does that mean? That as he moves out of the white, his hand is cut off. The part of him that greets people as he moves into the Blackness is being cut apart. That gesture of cutting. So, I'm talking too much. I want people to really go in and just really unpack the work.
Yeah, it's actually nice hearing that you're nervous a little bit, that you were
Oh God, I was nervous.
Well, it was, I mean, because I think that's when we're pushed. You know what I mean? Like, I think if we're not nervous, then we're like doing the same thing and like,
Right.
Like we care still, and also that there's a challenge there about what this work and it's the importance of it to you,
Right.
yeah, and so like to handle it, think of Asante Shangi's quote a lot, like to handle it warmly,
Right.
let her be born, let her be born.
Yeah.
Warm. And you want people to handle this warmly because it's such important work,
Okay.
yeah. Well, I think I have one more question. Well, I want to know if you have, well, I'll ask my question and then want to see if there's anything that you felt like we didn't get a chance to talk about. I guess it's the use, of social media.
Right.
And again, that's how I've been able to keep on following you more actively, of what you've been going through. But also, like, I learned things like about your paper and the paper they use and how you dry it, like
Right.
slow, like your studio, like, which oftentimes artists don't get to, you don't get that type of insight of like the actual process with an artist. And you not only give us insight, but you also are mentoring the future artists out there. So can you share a little bit more on your use of this new medium of social media and how that has influenced your practice?
Well, in both positive and negative ways. I think that I've always felt that it's taken me so long to get here, to this point where I could talk about my work, and not only talk about, but people could hear it and enjoy it. And so I always thought when I started doing those jump ins was a way of kind of helping other artists who live in communities where maybe there's a lot of gatekeepers, maybe there are a lot of people you don't have access to art. You can't go to New York all the time, or LA, or these real hot places that artists seen all the time. And I tried to knock down some of the building blocks to get you there. So I really did show a lot of stuff, maybe too much. I know I did, but I I I I changed the format somewhat of the early Saturday morning jump-ins, in which I now get other artists to come in and talk about their practice. Access. I think it's very important to have access to people and to know what they're thinking, how they're feeling, when they get up in the morning and go to the studio. It's the same way you feel. Being whatever it takes to be at the top of the game is very hard. I mean, but it's also hard not to believe in your work and push that work through to see where it goes. And don't really just, I'm going to do this because it's popular. Everybody's doing the white background, so I'm going to do this and do that. No, have your own language, your own background, your own, muse. And so I think the Saturday morning jump ins, I mean, I tell people all the time because I went to school with millennials. I was an old lady going back to school, and they taught me how to use the internet to really move and talk to other people. And so I try and do that with my practice.
Mm. Well, I thank you so much for this. This was like, just a treat for myself, right? Like
Yeah.
to talk to you intimately about such a beautiful, beautiful show. And I'm so excited. I'm so excited to see it. It's going to be up till December 22nd, I believe, right?
23rd.
23rd. Okay, I just
No worries. No
yeah,
worries.
I was like going from my top of my head. 23rd, which is great because you could see it during the holiday season when you go to New York City. And I just wish you all the best. And you have a catalog to it as well, right?
Yes, yes. I have a new book out. I mean, it's
Yeah.
a monologue. I'm not monologue, monograph of my work. Is kind of started at the beginning.
Oh,
20 years of Deborah Roberts artwork, because it is work. It's
20.
beautiful work. I mean, it's beautiful to, like I said before, it's great to do what you love to do, but it is still your job. It's your work and you have to protect it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh, this is beautiful. And congratulations.
Well, thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much for that dialogue, Deborah and Scheherazade. That was amazing. And it was so special to hear more about the works in this show. We have a few audience questions, Deborah. So if you're
Fantastic.
open to those, I'll give folks the chance to ask you their questions. GE, you get to go first. I'm going to give you the chance to unmute.
Thank you so much, Chloe. Thank you, Scheherazade, and thank you, Deborah. I love this. It's like so ebullient in so many ways too, even though it's so challenging. I keep thinking when I'm looking at it, it seems that your work operates in the same key as great essays or novels, which you kind of alluded to a bit. And because of the way in which they seem to manage to meet us where we are, is there anything to this? Does that
Yeah.
does that rhyme at all?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I tell people all the time, I went a lot of years without knowing literature was the key. I didn't know that. It took me going to graduate school. And you know what, when I started reading Cornell West and Bell Hooks, this was prior to going, I realized the work needed that. It needed something else that I couldn't give it. You can have talent all day, but if you don't have the right ingredients to create, to build that talent up, it's just talent. And so I went to school, and that's when I realized that. I mean, it's so funny story, I'm a Texan, so I tell stories. So I got in a classroom with a bunch of youngins, and I was sitting in the back, and then we started reading and talk about these books. Then the next class, I was in the middle section. By the fourth meeting of class, I was in the front row. It was like water being, sent to me, the food, everything. You can have a plate and all the ingredients to nourish you. But if you don't have the water to sustain you, so anyway, so to your question, I think it is in a way poetry and literature and within the book, within the visual practice.
Thank you. It's so in the mix. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you for that question, GE, and thank you for that answer, Deborah. The next question is going to be from my colleague, Eleanor. Eleanor, I'll give you the chance to.
Thanks, Chloe, and thank you so much, Deborah and Scheherazade. This has been so incredible. So much to think about and ruminate on. I'm really interested, Deborah, in your reusing of patterns, and I was wondering, when you use patterns in multiple different works, do you use them always for the same purpose within the work? For example, do you always use, for example, the yellow flower pattern that you mentioned, is it always clothing, or do you ever, use it for a different part of the work?
No,
How do you think about it?
it's always clothing. Maybe a beret or something, but it's always clothes. That 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 flowers in particular, it's a beautiful piece that's called Still I Rise, and in it, it has those fists that you saw, and in the process piece, and they're coming out of her dreadlocks, those hands, and the flower makes her top. So it was kind of, like alluding to that whole idea of that type of work. But all the patterns I use normally go to clothes and socks and things like that.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, and if there aren't any more audience questions, the last two questions are going to come from me. My first question is related to time. I'm curious how time is an ingredient for you, Deborah, because I feel like, as GE says, the works meet us where we are in a way, and there's a lot of decisions sartorially in terms of the clothing that sort of root the people that you're depicting in our moment, but then there's a flatness to the backgrounds that sort of creates an ambiguity that really serves the work as well. And I'm curious to hear you speak about how you think about time when you're making the work.
Right. Well, any artist producing work right now, this time, is artifact. It's artifact because it's going to be seen 100, 150 years from now. And then the great thing about it, and that I hope with my process and my practice, is that people 150 years from now, when they uncover this work, saying, I can't believe that was ever an issue. Can you believe that someone had to talk about Blackness in a way like this, or seeing children as human beings? It's so ridiculous. So as time moves on in the work, it's so important to be very clear about the process that you're creating. I was talking in my talk on Saturday, is that we look at James Baldwin and the words that he talked about 50 years ago. They're very relevant today. It's as if he's talking about things today. You look at Hannah Hawk, which is one of my heroes, a collage person, and the way she talk about, appropriation of Black bodies with white mask on the top and white bodies on the bottom. We're still talking about that. She's German artist. So things like that, we're creating artifacts each time we put our work together and say, this is the title, and we give it out to the world for consumption. It's going to be, talked about, hopefully, if we're still alive. Humanity is still exists in 150 years about this work.
Thank you. You can really feel that in the works, especially when you're with them in person. And my last question is just about the process of making your monograph.
Wow.
I'm curious what that was like, looking over 2 decades of work and seeing your progression and having friends write about your work on the occasion of the monograph. What was that like for you at this moment? And also then having this exhibition coincide with it and open up Stephen Friedman in New York. This is their first show in New York City. Yeah.
Yeah, I think people don't realize how much it was. It was a lot. And doing the monograph book, it's like looking 2 times, because when you look at the work, the early works, I know where I was then and how hard it was. The work was changing. We got to the point just a little bit before the work started changing. We didn't go all into the paintings. That's coming later. But we landed at a couple last paintings and then went to where the work started to really change and got ugly and disgusting. And, just like anything you're birthing, it's not going to come out clean and pristine. It's going to be some raw edges. And so we showed those, and just going back and reliving some of those things, and hoping for what has happened, not really thinking it was going to happen. And so creating that book and have, the essays, have Echo Eshon write about it, a British person writing about Black bodies in the world and how children are seeing, which is amazing. Sarah Lewis, writing, in dialogue with her, it was just kind of just after work was being produced, and and laid out in the book. It was just so great, but it was extremely a lot of work. And I'm glad it's over. I don't have to do another one for a couple of years now. So that was pretty neat.
Well, I wish you so many congratulations because
Thank you.
it's really beautiful. Okay, well, I think those are all of our questions for today. I want to thank you all so much for your questions. Those were great, and thank you, Deborah, for answering everyone's questions. At the Rail, we have a tradition of ending our community events with a poetry reading, and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome our Poet Laureate of the Day, Ezza Ahmed, here to the stage. Ezza Ahmed is an educator and poet based in New York City. Her poetry is concerned with diaspora, memory, and water. When she isn't writing, she enjoys cozying up with a good cup of tea. Her work is in Wanda Magazine and the Gingerbug Press and is forthcoming in the Idaho Review and Sycamore Review. And with that, please join me in welcoming Ezza.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. So my first poem today is Blue Windows, the Garden and Opening. Kissing my grandmother on both cheeks caved in, her mouth carved into an O. My third, maybe last time in Kashmir, but each like the first. Her curved wicker chair, a dance of multicolored threads against some door. Single lace curtain, no windows. I'm thinking of the way in which sentences overlap. Some families know no end stop. An opening, center roofless, living room, dining room, some cousin's bedroom. Every day was red. Closed eyes under the sun, henna stain, losing a tooth, strands of my brother's beard at 5 p.m. How could I not idolize saffron? Everyone's dreamt up of something, like a garden. There were only chipped plant pots, burnt parsley. Hard, hard rain, my aunt squatted on the floor, bamboo broom clutched in her palm, the making and unmaking of a river. Bollywood music cutting in and out of the radio. I'm thinking of how renewed gray looks if you think of it as blue. Cliche, any minute my aunt could have broken into song and I would have known all the moves. Sometimes night stilled on the thread-woven beds. Ripe peaches, soft spots, leaking juice, sour gooseberries. Salt rock is as pink as a sore throat, sliced open. My grandmother tongue tingling like the light reflecting off green lizards. Blue eyes, youngest daughter of a youngest daughter. Of course, I was named Respect. Sunset whispering into the horizon, stretched shadows. My arm, a bridge between me and my relatives. I'm thinking of what we ate. Onions and tomatoes cooked in spiced oil. Bitter gourd stuffed with turmeric potato. Long nights, the hunger I felt. Is my mouth cursed in an eternal state of want. This is my second poem. My cousin thinks I gave her nazar because I didn't say mashallah when she swapped her nose stud for a hoop. And 2 days later, I met by the bursting bulb of blood and pus, which seals the fibrous innards of her nose cartilage. On the outside sits the bulb, pulsing, expanding. It's as if it's breathing. Looks like a red evil eye ornament, white pupil right at the center. She has a nose growing out of her nose, says, I did this to her. It's all my fault. Should have kept my mouth shut if I wasn't going to let God grace my compliment. And I'm baffled. Slight peaks of nervous laughter rumble up my throat. I didn't mean to give it to you. I say all the words. Mashallah, alhamdulillah, subhanallah. But it's a little too late. The evil eye is taking over her nose. So we look up an old Islamic cure and decide against it, because neither of us want to wash our mouths and limbs in the same water. And in a few months, the evil eye goes away, and so does the piercing. And we've made a joke of the whole thing. But it also becomes a lesson that nazar is real, and so is the divine in me, the river that moves inside me. This is my last poem for the day. It's called 10 Days in the Tall Trees. Water calls out to me, each mouth a lush blue garden, a window, a warning. The rooftop is the worst. Sight is nothing but an opportunity to become the mountains, bruised heads disrupting the horizon, where the water streams into a comma, piercing the tongue behind my tongue, splitting opening to my grandmother. Language is where I grew less small, light streaming the gaps between my fingers tell a fortune of their own. Like who was related to who? Who? If you're there, Tell me where the creek stretches beyond the de facto. Line your eye with mine. A river is a bridge of time. Sliced throat of an apple is in season on the other side. Savor the tart sting again, again, and again. Thank you so much. I'm so glad I was able to read at such a lovely event.
Wow. Thank you so, so much, Ezza. That was so beautiful and such
Yes.
an amazing conclusion to this program. Really, really all our gratitude for your reading today. And of course, thank you again to Deborah, to Scheherazade, and thank you to the team at Stephen Friedman for their support in preparing for this event today. We'd also like to thank the Terra Foundation for American Art, who sponsor our New Social Environment program and make daily conversations like this one possible, and for their support of our growing archive, which you can view on the Rails YouTube channel. For 23 years, the Rail has provided a platform for arts, culture, and politics through our free monthly publication and public events like our daily NSE. You can check the chat for a link to donate to support the Rail. And if you're free tomorrow at 1 p.m., join us for a poetry reading curated by Aaron Perez, featuring Perez, Portland Houghton Harjo, Bailey Cohen Vera, and Abby Romine. And with that, you all can now turn on your microphones and say hello and goodbye as you leave. Thank you so, so much for joining us today, and go forth and be well. And please do see the show at Stephen Friedman in New York.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Station
Thank you so
guys.
much.
Thank you so
Wonderful.
much
Thank
for this
you.
great
Thank
you so
conversation.
much.
Thank you,
Thank
Deborah.
Bye, everybody.
Opportunity.
Go,
That was
Deborah.
awesome.
Thank you so much.
That was so amazing.
Thank you for the reading. Thank you, you guys.
That was so beautiful. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
Thank you.
congratulations,
Thank
Deborah.
you.
Congratulations.
Three
So-
cheers.
Thank you.
Wow. Bye.
Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank
Bye.
you so
Bye.
much.
Bye.